Nightmares channel. Today I bring you 3 scary stories. My haunted mirror, reflection of fear. I've always been fascinated by mirrors. They're such a common part of our lives, yet there's something inherently eerie about them. They show us our reflection, but what if there's more to them than just that? What if they're a gateway to something else, something sinister? It all started when I moved into my new apartment. It was a cozy place, just the right size for me. The previous tenant had left behind an old mirror in the hallway. It was large, with an intricate silver frame that looked like it belonged in a museum. I liked how it added a touch of elegance to the space, so I decided to keep it. The first night, as I was getting ready for bed, I caught a glimpse of something in the mirror. It was just a shadow, a flicker at the edge of my vision. I shrugged it off, blaming my tired eyes. But as the days went on, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. One evening, while I was brushing my teeth, I saw it clearly. A figure standing behind me in the mirror. I spun around, my heart pounding, but there was no one there. My bathroom door was locked, and I was alone. I tried to rationalize it, convincing myself it was just my imagination. But the next night, it happened again. This time, the figure was closer. I could see its face, or rather, the lack of it. It was a dark, shapeless void, like a shadow given form. Panicking, I covered the mirror with a sheet. That night, I barely slept, jumping at every sound. The next morning, I decided to move the mirror to the attic. Out of sight, out of mind, I hoped. Days went by without incident. I started to relax, thinking maybe I had just been stressed and seeing things. But one night, as I lay in bed, I heard a noise from the attic. It was a soft, shuffling sound, like something moving. Grabbing a flashlight, I made my way upstairs. The attic was cold and musty, filled with old boxes and forgotten furniture. The mirror stood in the corner, still covered. As I approached it, the shuffling grew louder. My heart raced, but I had to know what was happening. I pulled the sheet off the mirror, and for a moment, everything was still. Then, the reflection changed. Instead of my own face, I saw a dark, twisted version of myself, grinning maliciously. It raised a hand, and I felt a cold touch on my shoulder. I stumbled back, the flashlight slipping from my grasp. The mirror began to glow, a faint, eerie light. The figure stepped out of the mirror, its form shifting and warping. It whispered my name, its voice a chilling echo. Terrified, I ran downstairs and locked myself in my bedroom. I could hear it moving through the house, its footsteps slow and deliberate. It was looking for me. I don't know how long I stayed hidden, but eventually the noises stopped. Summoning all my courage, I peeked out. The house was silent. The mirror was back in the hallway, but the figure was gone. I moved out the next day, leaving everything behind. The mirror, the apartment, the nightmares. But sometimes, late at night, I still feel like I'm being watched. And I wonder if one day, I'll see that dark figure again, staring back at me from the other side of a mirror. The hitchhiking request. I still had the bitter taste of whiskey in my mouth as I drove down that deserted road. It was past midnight, and the only thing that kept me company was the occasional sound of crickets and the rhythmic roar of the engine. My wife and daughter stayed at my in-laws' house over the weekend after my mother-in-law's birthday party, but I had to go back. I had an early meeting at the office, as usual. I sighed, rubbing my tired eyes, trying to concentrate. The road seemed endless in front of me, the headlights illuminating only a narrow strip of asphalt, while the darkness swallowed everything else. It was was one of those quiet country roads, surrounded by nothing but dense trees and empty fields, the kind of road that made you feel completely alone in the world. The drive was long and tiring until I noticed something ahead, a figure standing by the side of the road. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, but as I got closer, the figure became clearer. A woman. She was completely still, right at the edge of the headlight's reach, arm outstretched, hand clenched with thumb outstretched. She was hitchhiking. I slowed down the car, but what the hell does a woman do alone on such a deserted road and at night? She looked normal, but there was something strange. His clothes were dirty, his face was pale. I stopped the car about 4 meters from her, but when I looked in the rearview mirror, I didn't see her anymore. I turned to look back. Nothing. The road behind me was empty. It simply disappeared. What? Where is she? I mumbled to myself. My heart raced as I scoured the darkness with my eyes. Am I seeing things? Maybe it was the whiskey or the tiredness that was messing with my head. I shook my head, started the car again, and moved on. Whatever happened, it didn't make sense. But as much as I tried to focus on the road ahead of me, the image of this woman kept hammering in my mind. As I started to accelerate, suddenly, the glow of the headlights appeared behind me. A car. No, it wasn't just a car, it was a police car. The red and blue lights cut through the darkness like a blade. The car slowed down and, to my surprise, stopped exactly where I had seen the woman. I watched in the rearview mirror as the officers got out of the car, flashlights in hand, and approached the side of the road in the same place where I saw the woman. My heart was in my throat. They were looking for something or someone. What's going on? I whispered to myself, feeling a knot in my stomach. Should I go back? Tell them what I saw? But as I struggled with my thoughts, a shiver ran down my spine. Maybe it would be better not to get involved. Whatever was going on there, it didn't feel right. I didn't want to stay to find out. I stepped on the gas, deciding it was time to get out of that place as soon as possible. After about 20 minutes, as I struggled with the sleep that was starting to overwhelm me, I decided to stop the car somewhere and take a nap of about 15 minutes, but something right in front of me caught my eye. Someone in the darkness of the road hitchhiking. It was her. The same woman. She was standing on the side of the road again. This time I could clearly see her pale face. Totally dark eyes that glowed, reflecting the light from the car's headlight. I sped up, the car roaring as I raced down the road, my heart beating uncontrollably in my chest. The sleep that was beginning to creep in instantly disappeared. I kept looking in the mirror, hoping to see her, but the road behind me was again dark and empty. Minutes passed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. That woman. How could she have disappeared like this and reappeared so quickly? I didn't stop until I got home, my heart still racing, sweat running down my forehead. I parked in the garage and sat in the car for a moment, trying to calm down. My house seemed silent, with nothing unusual, but I didn't feel safe. I grabbed my things and ran into the house, locking the door behind me. The house was dark and silent, and I felt a strange sense of relief. At least, I was home. At least, I was safe here. Or so I thought. I went upstairs, ready to collapse into bed, but when I reached the top, something caught my attention. Footprints. It looked like someone had walked through the mud and entered the house without washing their feet. They left through the front door, went up the stairs, and they entered my room. My blood ran cold. I was paralyzed, staring at those footprints in the dim light of the hallway. My mind was trying to figure it out. Did a burglar enter the house while we were out of town? was no way anyone could get in without setting off the alarm. The police would have come to check. Slowly, I began to retreat, my breathing becoming more shallow. Then I heard a sound of something falling coming from my room. Someone or something was inside. All my instincts screamed for me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I stood there, my heart pounding, waiting for what was about to happen. The door to my room opened, just a crack, and it was then that I saw him. It was Spark, my daughter's cat. This son of a nearly killed me from a heart attack. Spark walked towards me, but stopped halfway. He turned to the bathroom, his fur bristling. I looked in the same direction when I saw her in the shadows. The same woman, looking at me with those dark eyes. My breath got stuck in my throat, and before I could react, it melted into the air. Silence filled the house again, but I knew it was still there, watching me. My daughter made an imaginary friend. My husband was able to fulfill his dream, living in a house in the middle of the woods. At first I was against it. I didn't want to drive for an hour every time I wanted to buy something or get together with friends. I changed my mind after I started working online. I was home all day working, but almost every day someone would come up and interrupt me. You're not even working, you're on the computer. Your work is online, you can do it later. Besides getting deeply irritated, I never said anything because I hate conflict. Come in, we can gossip all day. I always said, smile on my face, but in reality, holding myself from punching the person. As the expert conflict solver that I am, I moved to the middle of the woods because I didn't know how to say no. My husband seemed to be in paradise. Feel the fresh air, the sounds of the forest, this place is wonderful. I only noticed the endless insects and the deafening noise of the forest at night. At least the air really was nice. Our daughter, Sarah, was 5 years old. My husband dropped her off at daycare every morning and brought her home shortly after noon. I wondered how that would work in the long run. When she got older, she would hate having to spend almost 2 hours every day on a means of transport just to get to school. Anyway, that's a problem for my future self. For now, she was an adorable and obedient child who never gave us any problems. After a week of living there, Sarah started to act strangely. I would hear her talking to the window, and when I entered the room she would stop abruptly and look at me, smiling. Who are you talking to? Nobody, Mom. After a month, Sarah started asking strange questions. Mom, do I have a sister? No, you are an only child. Oh, there's a girl just like me at my bedroom window. Just like you. This is called reflection, my love. Refiten. Reflection, like in mirrors. I picked her up and carried her to the bathroom mirror. See? That's our reflection, not another person. No, Mom, a girl like me in the backyard, at the window. I concluded that Sarah had created an imaginary friend. A friend visits you every day at the window. That is nice, baby, but she's not your sister, just a friend, even if she looks a lot like you. All right, Mom. Sarah gave me a hug and went back to playing. When my husband got home, I told him about our daughter's imaginary friend, arguing that maybe it wasn't ideal for her to grow up without interacting with anyone. He replied that it was silly of me. She interacted with other children in the nursery, and that was enough. Sarah talked to herself more and more often. One day, I could have sworn I saw a child, curly hair just like Sarah's, run out of the window as soon as I entered the room. The days were pleasant. I spent the nights reading books and watching series. On Saturdays, we drove into town to hang out with our friends, and it was enough social interaction to sate my craving for small talk until the following week. I was a little worried about the forest. The environment could be dangerous for a 5-year-old girl, so I kept an eye on Sarah all day long. When I couldn't observe her directly, I monitor and check on her every half hour. The other day, I locked her in her room, leaving her with a children's show about dinosaurs and cows being best friends. Don't even ask. After watching a few hundred children's shows with my daughter, I'm sure the writers of those shows use heavy hallucinogens before work. To my surprise, after I sat down on the laptop to work, I saw my daughter running around the backyard. I immediately opened the window and yelled at her. "Sarah, how did you get out of your room? You cannot go into the yard without my permission." She pretended she didn't hear me and ran into the middle of the forest. I got desperate and quickly put on my sneakers to run after her when I heard Sarah laughing in the bedroom. I unlocked the door and she was there, still watching the children's show. "Sarah, did you leave the room?" She made an expression of disbelief, as if she didn't understand the reason for my question. "Never mind. If you need me, call me right away." There was no way Sarah could have left the room. The door and window were locked, much less come back from the woods so quickly. I must have seen things. The following week, on a sunny day, I let Sarah play in the backyard, and I watched her through the window as she played. If she tried to get out of my line of sight, I immediately asked her to come back. However, a few minutes later, while looking at the window, I felt shivers down my spine to the bizarre scenario that I was looking at. There were two Sarahs playing in the backyard, a few feet away from me. "Honey, come here right now," I yelled as I recovered a bit. The two started running towards me. However, only one of them entered. The other one stood in the doorway, smiling and looking at me without blinking. She was identical to my daughter, but she didn't look human. She looked like an android trying to imitate a child. "Mom, may I come in?" The little girl standing in the doorway asked. "Who are you?" I asked. "May I come in?" The entity that imitated my daughter asked again. "Are you the daughter of someone in the neighborhood?" I asked, trying to rationalize what was happening, even knowing that a 5-year-old wouldn't have walked alone for almost 1 kilometer, which was the distance from our house to the nearest one. "Someone, daughter, may I come in?" I slammed the door in the child's face and closed all the curtains in the house. As I looked out a window, I watched the little girl stand still for minutes, staring at the door, not moving a muscle. After a while, she put both hands on the ground and ran towards the forest, galloping like a horse. I closed the last curtain and waited for nightfall. As soon as my husband arrived, I explained what had happened and said I was leaving that place immediately. He even tried to argue, said I was making excuses because I didn't want to live there. I realized that it was useless trying to talk to him. He simply would not believe me. I took Sarah, filled 2 suitcases, and went to my mother's house. When I got there, I explained to my mother what had happened. She was surprised, but said that I could stay there as long as I wanted. After dinner, I decided to call my husband. "Hey, my love, why are you calling me from inside the house?" "What do you mean?" "I'm at my mother's." "It's not funny. You kept knocking on the door, and when I opened it, you kept asking, 'May I come in? May I come in?' non-stop, refusing to talk to me. You didn't even call me when you left Sarah at your mother's house. Listen carefully to what I'm saying. Get out of this house now. Don't take anything. Just leave." "What are you talking about?" "This is stupid. I don't know why I'm talking on the phone if you're here." "Wait, how are you talking without a hole?" I heard sounds of crashing, fighting, and tearing flesh, along with screams and then gasps that got lower and lower in volume until everything was silent. After a few seconds, I heard footsteps and someone picking up the phone from the floor. In a cheerful and jovial tone, a voice identical to my husband's said, "I love Mother's house, knocking on the door. May I come in?"